Alright guys, TC Mabe coming back at you with another live stream for Unreal Engine and working on a couple of asset packs. I see you in there, Acid, and a couple of other people watching, just getting my stuff set up here. Sorry, I was in the middle of doing some household project stuff. Tonight's live stream is going to be about working with the multiplayer survival game template and also with the farming system, and then integration with some of the Synty Polygon assets. Most of this stuff is available on the marketplace, so if you go out and look for multiplayer survival game template, this is about 20 bucks. Pretty good package. You also have the farming system, which is on here. Just want to show you the assets we're using for this so that you know what to get down the road. Farming system, which we talked about a little bit in the one last night. And then, of course, our Synty Polygon stuff, which I'm going to be using the Synty Farm Kit just to bring some stuff in there. So there's a Synty Farm Pack. Again, these guys provide great assets. So, without any further ado, what you basically do to get all this stuff integrated and set up, there is a tutorial that is provided from the farming system. So if you're back there and you go to the farming system rather, and you pull this up, down at the bottom there is an instructional document, which is this right here. And we're going to follow along with this to go and get everything integrated. For the most part, I have already done that, but I want to walk you through the steps. So the first thing you would do is you would go into, after purchasing the things, go into your vault. You're going to look for the multiplayer survival game kit or template, create a project. Then you're going to do the same thing with your farming system, and you're just going to create these two projects. After you get done creating the two projects, basically what you want to do is go into the one for the multiplayer survival game template farming system. You're going to open this project up, and you're not really going to make any changes to it. You're just unpacking it to a directory so that you have a place to get the files from for your migration. But I'm going to load it up and show you what it looks like inside of there. And shouldn't take too long to load these up because I've already compiled them and everything. For anybody else who's joining the chat, welcome if it's your first time joining us. Again, I'm doing these live streams just to kind of kill time since we're quarantined here in the United States, and usually get on around somewhere between 8 and 9 o'clock. Running a little bit late tonight because I'm doing some home remodeling projects. But inside of our multiplayer survival game template, you're going to have one folder called farming system, and underneath of that you're going to have all these other folders. But basically, if you collapse all this up to the farming system folder, you can right click on this and go to the migrate button, and migrate's just showing you all the different assets that are going to be copied as part of your migration. Okay, you don't need to do anything with it. You're just going to say okay, and then you're going to go over to wherever you have your multiplayer survival game template, and you're going to go in there, navigate into the content folder, and then you would say okay, and basically it would copy this farming system folder into the content folder of your multiplayer survival game template package. You can see I've already done that here. So after you do that, that's pretty much all you need this project for. You can go ahead and close this project. You're going to go back to your launcher, and in your launcher, now you had created the multiplayer survival game template, and you're going to go in here and open this one up. And inside of there, I've already done a lot of this work, so I might destroy these after I go through the conceptual of it and build them from the ground up real quick. But hopefully you know how to download and install packages, and then that migration piece will get you to the first part of this. Okay, so inside of here now, you would end up with two folders. Ignore this Polygon Farm thing. I'll talk about that in a minute. But you would end up with the survival game template and the farming system being integrated into the same project. Now, if we go and look at our documentation, what it says is that in order to migrate these together, the first thing you're going to do is begin by migrating the farm system kit to the MSGT installation, which we've done. Then you go into the farming system component to the MSGT survival controller, and you're going to add in the component for the farming system. So what that looks like is under MSGT survival controller, that means you're going to go into this folder for SGT. You're going to go into the blueprint section, and you're going to go under game. And under game, you're going to find the survival controller. Once you get to the survival controller, you double click that. And up at the top of this survival controller, there's a thing that says add component. When you click on it, you can type in farming in here, and it's just going to pull up the C farming system. So you would click that, and it would then pull over the farming system as a reference to your survival controller. Okay? So that's how that process works there. You just go into the survival controller, add component, go and find your farming system, and you just double click on that, and it'll pull it right in. I've already done that. Now what you want to do is go back to your documentation. Your documentation says that after you add that component, you want to copy the events from the blueprint of the player controller, which is inside the farming system folder, to the survival controller, except for the last two event inputs, which are the E key. So what that looks like is if you go into the blueprint for the player controller inside of the farming system. So we're going to collapse this folder just to stay less confused. Open up the farming system blueprints, and you have the BP player controller. You would double click this, and under your event graph here, you have farming system keys. So what you're going to do there is you're just going to left click and drag and highlight all this stuff. And then you're going to hit Control-C to copy it. Once you have it copied into your buffer, you would go back over to your survival controller, go to that thing's event graph. Or I'm sorry, not the event graph. Scratch that, not the event graph. You want to go to the graph for input mappings. And if you don't see it up here, you can double click it from down there to get to it. But on the input mappings, you would go in here and right click or left click in any of the spots out there and then paste these in. What I did is I copied everything, pasted them all in, and then just deleted the E key from the bottom of this section. Pretty straightforward. Yo, what's up, Felix? How you making out? Just doing some survival game template stuff, some integration with the farming kit. As soon as you pull these in, you delete the E key from there, and that takes care of your input mapping references. The E key is already handled in here somewhere else, and that's why you don't want to have that, because it would end up causing a conflict. So after you're done with that, you can compile that. Everything should be good to go. Your blueprint player controller from the farming kit is going to have a warning in here for these 3 different issues. They're not a problem. Just make sure you hit the save key. And you're basically at that point done with the blueprint for the player controller out of the farming system. Now we go back to our documentation. We've done this step. And inside of the survival controller, we want to get the get action type function. And it says modify it as shown below. So we'll go back in here to our survival controller, and we want to go to the event graph. Let's see here. Actually, this is in the... Let me go back. I don't want to confuse anybody here. Inside the survival controller, open the get action type function. So actually that doesn't show up on the top here unless you go into functions, and under the functions for the utility side of this, you can highlight the get action type, double click it, it'll pop it up over here. Now the get action type section of this looks a little confusing, but if you scroll it all the way out to where it's just a little thing, you want to come down to the bottom of that. And basically the 2 nodes that are here at the bottom would normally have been setting up here. All you're going to do is drag those down to make a little bit of space to put a new row in. Okay? And then what I did is I copied these 3 pieces and pasted them right underneath of it. And then you're just going to wire it up the way that I have here. So what we're doing is we're going and finding out if there's an implementation of the interface. Same thing here, actor in, does implement interface, and then to a branch condition. And when you bring this over, you're going to drag from your branch condition, you're going to connect the false wire of the branch above it to the input side of the branch below. Then you are going to come out of the false side of that into the exec condition down here. These are already wired up that way. Then you're going to come out of the true side, and you're going to go in and punch in CL interact with farm actor, and the target of that is the C farming system. That should come up with it. And then out of the true side of this, or out of the action side of this, you're just going to go over here and reference over to the return node. Okay? So the way that I did that, I can show you this again. I could do it from the ground up, but I'm just going to leave it wired up the way that it is for now. But again, we're copying these three things, pasting them in. We drag everything down to make a little bit of room for them. We drag off the pin, punch in CL interact with farm actor. You're going to reference the farm actor there, and it'll pull up the farming system with it. You just connect these pins the way that I have it here. So I'm going to try and, let me just drag this over some so it'll be easier to see. So you'll have something that'll kind of look like this. I'm going to blow this up a little bit. That way you can see it in its entirety. And you can pause your video there for a couple of seconds. Follow along with what I have there to make it look similar to that. And everything should be done with the get action type. Okay? I'm going to move on. You want to compile this, and you can close it or leave it open. It doesn't really matter. Now we're going to go over to the next section. And actually, if you go to this document, that does kind of show you that. But where I got confused in here, number one, was how to pull up this get action type function in the first place, because I didn't see it up at the top until I opened up and exposed it from the function side. And secondly, to interact with the farm actor, you don't know where this goes to. So I just deduced by pure reference on the other side that it must go there because everything else was gone there, and sure enough that works. But I just want to give you the heads up on that. So the next step in our documentation says what we want to do is we want to create a reward when harvesting a plant. So if you saw in the template for the farming system, let me close this. Inside of the farming system, there is a section in here in the blueprints under the C farming system where, if you're out here in the larger picture of it, this actually says insert logic to handle reward when harvesting, and it's got a couple of nodes here that are not completely connected to what you want to have in there yet. But inside of the farming system, there's also a data folder that has a DT_farming structure in it. If you open this up, this is the table of all the different plants and things that you're going to be growing and creating into your world. And to create a new one, you just simply hit the add and then populate the field values down here with your reference to the meshes and the thumbnails and all that kind of stuff, right? But over here on the back end of this, there is a reward on harvest field that you fill out. And this name here, this consumable_apple, is actually from the reference inside of the SGT in its blueprint data folder for data SGT_items. And the name is off of this row over here. So whatever you're growing and you want that to be something that goes into your inventory from growing it, you're going to have that in this data table for the SGT items, get its name as a reference, and put that in the other data table as the thing that is received as a reward when you harvest it. So in the case of, like here, there's a consumable apple. What I could do is I could go and I could harvest apples and use my Synty Polygon assets to create an apple plant, or an apple tree rather. When that grows apples, if I harvest it, I get apples in my inventory. Okay, so that's how those two things are wired up and connected and talking to each other. To make that work, what you need to do is in your farming system, under the blueprints in the C farming system, again, you have to wire up the logic down here, insert logic to handle reward when harvesting. So what this is, I'm going to blow this up because I added these in as well. All you're going to do is you're going to come off of the branch that's in there already, and you're just going to fill in the blanks here. So down this break str farming system, or structure for farming system, is already in there. But what you want to do is you want to create another node coming off reward on harvest, and go to this make data table row handle, and you want to put in there that it goes to the data table for DT SGT items, and then the data table row handlers over here on the inventory entry. Same thing, you just drag a pin off and say make. Like if I drug off of here, I would drag out and I would literally just type make, and it's going to pull up the thing right off the bat, So in here I'm making an inventory entry, and that's how you would put that in. You go out of there. So make string SGT inventory entry. And that's going to come off of the connection there and go into the item. And you also have to put in add inventory slot and get inventory slot. And get player controller is the target of the inventory. So basically what this saying is, when you harvest something, go get the person that owns the inventory and populate their inventory slots with the items that came out of the data table for SGT items that were referenced by whatever it was that you picked up in that reward on harvest field. Okay, so again, I'm gonna blow this up a little bit here and let you look at that and study it for a second. Again, pause your screen here. But this is where you insert your logic to handle the reward when harvesting. Now, when you're done with that, and you have your E key, or your E key's already hooked up, and you got all your key bindings done, and you have those two things done, essentially now your farming system would work with the multiplayer survival game template. Now, inside of the MSGT section, you have characters in here. And one of the characters is down here in the meshes section, mesh character. So this character here is the one that runs around in your game by default. And what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to go into, there should be a game blueprint here for the survival character. And I just want to go in here, I'm going to put this back the way that it normally goes. I'm going to go under the mesh, the viewport, and ordinarily what you would see, I think, is, where's he at? It's about 70,000 of these. I think it's the mannequin body. Yeah. And then the anim class, whatever the default was, I think is SGT anim BP. And then there's a head in here. Now, I've shrunk his head down. I don't even know if you can see it anymore. His head is normally, you can see I made it 0.1, 0.1, 0.1, but it's normally 1, 1, and 1. So there's the mannequin's head. And if I compile this and go out and play it, zoom this back out a little bit so you can see. So this is what you would have at the end of wiring those two things up if you didn't mess around with the players at all. So you can see that I am able to run around. I can go over here and interact with an object. I hit the E key, that comes into view, or into my backpack, hit my inventory. I've got a base layer pack now. And you see in the bottom right hand corner it says G to enable placement mode. Well, that's coming from the farming system. So if I hit G, it's going to give me my farming kit items, which I can again rotate these around, do whatever I want to. But as soon as I drop that, I can hit E again to interact, and I can go and, you know, plant something. Now these already have water in the packs for them, or in the soil beds. So just go ahead and grow that out. And, you know, again, you can E to interact. If you want to add more water to that bed, you could do that. And then you could harvest this. Now, because I put a reference in my table to the item that you get on harvesting, the thing that you get there actually was the apple that goes into your inventory. Okay, so you got a consumable stackable apple because that's what I referenced inside of the node for that particular plant. So hopefully, as you can see, that is functional and works the way that that you would want it to. Okay. Now what I want to do is I want to go and talk a little bit about the character side of this. So again, we got the survival character blueprint that's in here. And that survival character, under the blueprint section, you have an animation thing actually just above that. And this is where his animation blueprint is at. And then he has a skeleton down here in the character section. So just like any other character mapping under the retarget manager, you just want to make sure that you have a humanoid rig on here and that these are all mapped and ready to go. Now what I did is I went in and I took his pose and I moved everything up to line out his arms. So right now I'm holding down the Alt key with my left mouse button. I'm going to zoom or pan up around here. all I tried to do was to make his arms straighter and up higher into a more of a T pose. Okay. Once you get him into a T pose, he's available for retargeting onto the Synty character. The only thing you have to make sure of is two things. Well, I should say the only thing, but a couple things you want to make sure of is that your skeleton for this mannequin in the game has a weapon slot, which is attached to his right hand. So you want to do the same thing to your Synty character. And then he also has a flashlight slot, which is attached to his, looks like it's under his neck or his head or whatever. And I think those are the only extra slots that are in there that are added in. I didn't put the flashlight slot in mine yet, but I will. But you can add in the weapon slot, and you can basically, you have to modify it until everything fits to where the weapon is kind of like laid like this. And I'll show you what that looks like here in a second. But now that you have this in here and everything's set up, you would go to your, in my case, I imported the Polygon Farm system. And in Polygon Farm, I have meshes and I have characters in there. And all the characters in my Polygon Farm all use the same skeleton, which is the Scarecrow. So in my Scarecrow skeleton, I want to go in there, and I actually modified his bones a little bit later because his arms aren't quite right with this. But anyway, I brought this guy in, and I did go in and I added a weapon slot, which is attached underneath of his right hand to attach the gun. And then on the retarget manager, I just made sure he has his humanoid skeleton as well. And I'm going to go, when I go to do that, I would go into back to my other character's animation blueprint. So we would go back to SGT under the animation blueprint. Now you would right click this, retarget anim blueprints, and duplicate. I may have gone a little fast for some of you there. Right click on this, retarget anim blueprints, and then select duplicate anim blueprints and retarget. And you're going to see one skeleton if you only brought in that one pack. You're going to see one skeleton here, which is that Scarecrow skeleton, which is compatible with all the other characters in that particular asset pack. You highlight that, and you're going to see him available as a retargeting option. Now, what I do is I punch in Synty as my prefix to these. I put an underscore on it, and then I change the folder. I go to Polygon Farm Meshes, and under my character folder, I create an animation folder. So you can, once you get under there, if you just right click, you can say new folder and then type in animations or whatever, and you want to retarget all that stuff into that anim folder. Okay. When you do that, what you'll end up with is under the Polygon Farm section, under your characters and animations, you're going to have all the animations that go to the MSGT, the Multiplayer Survival Game Template. So there's your blueprint, and you have all your different animations, right? So you might have to tweak these a little bit. These aren't 100%, but they're pretty close. Okay. Now what you do, you have all that set up. Now you can go back into your game for SGT, go into the section in here for the blueprints, and the blueprint for the game and your survival character. You want to go to the mesh section. I always go to the viewport for that mesh. And you want to go down here, and under your skeletal mesh, you're going to pick your, in my case, I had this Farm Boy 01 on there. Now, his anim class, because you prefixed it with Synty, it would be called Synty underscore SGT anim BP. And that's going to give him, the look that you want there where he's got the motion. Here's the issue. The head for this mannequin is a separate item. It's a separate object. I would assume that it's so that as you play the game, you could have all the same bodies and several different head types that could be attached to it, or whatever it is that you're doing. That's probably the design of this MSGT. I don't know that much about it. What I did, though, is because I'm afraid that if I take it away, that it's going to, affect something else. I don't want to delete it or get rid of it. So all I do is I go over here. I have the head selected. I go over to the scale, and I'm just going to make this 0.1, hit the tab key, 0.1, hit the tab key, 0.1, hit the tab key. And all I'm really doing is I'm just making his head a little bit smaller so that it's inside of the skeletal mesh for the other character. His head's still there, you just can't see it. By the way, that same exact process of shrinking the scale on an object works the same way if you're doing something with the Paragon assets where they already have weapons in their hands. Like the Paragon guy has a big long sword. Greystone has a big long sword there. You can actually find the bone that's holding the sword and shrink the scale of it down to where you can't see it anymore. It's still there. Everything works the same way, but you've gotten rid of it. But anyway, now that that's done, I've basically reassigned my Farm Boy 01 character, and I've put an anim class on there for my Synty thing. And if I hit compile, everything should be good to go. I hit save. Now when I go back out here to play, what you're going to see is that I have my Synty character in my game. And same thing, I can still walk around. I can run. I can walk over here and find an apple. You know, I can pick that apple up. I look at my inventory, it's in there. I can use it. Everything should function. And I still have my enable placement mode, so I can go over here and say G, pull out my harvesting, my kit here. I'm kind of in the way of a tree there. But I can pull that out. I can go plant something, let that grow, right? All that stuff still works. And then I'm going to go down to here, and I'll show you. I don't know if you've ever played this game or not. This might be a spoiler for somebody who just bought this. But over here, there's a backpack. And in that backpack, if you go in there, that's where you can find your weapons and some ammo. And basically, hit the I key, go over here and equip that, and now you have a gun. But you see that my bone for that gun, I was telling you earlier, the bone is kind of out of alignment with certain animations. So what you'll have to do is you'll have to find out either, number one, if you can get the arms to be straighter, straighten them out in your animation blueprints or in your animation editor, or you can go in there and you can rotate this bone so that when the character's holding a gun, that bone's back a little bit further. Okay, so his normal walk animation, I'll show you what I'm saying there. Because you'll have to do this for these because you're using a different size skeleton. Everything was built around the first one and you're just remapping it. But if I go into my Polygon Farm characters and go into the animation folder where I put all that other stuff in there, you should be able to just type in walk, and he should just have a normal upright walk there where he's walking with a rifle. That's forward rifle iron sights might be the one. These are all crouched. That's a walk forward, walk backward. So I'm assuming that that's your animation right there, probably. Actually, it looks okay here, so it might be a slightly different animation. But see, I've already moved this around, but let me show you how to do it. And you'll just have to go through each of the animations and kind of toggle this in. So the first thing you would do is you go in and you find your weapon slot. And then the second thing is you go down here and you say add preview asset. And you go in and you look for, gun. And you're going to find a gun. And once you put the gun on there, it'll assign that preview animation to be here. Now you can highlight the weapon slot, and by using these keys over here to translate the object, you can basically move this around so that when he gets the weapon attached to him, it's going to dictate where that thing is. And you can pull this over and you can tilt it. You can use the bottom section to kind of tweak it left and right from the center there, kind of orient it the right way. And you can also rotate it left and right. So you're going to have to do this to kind of get those things lined up with where you want them. And it takes a little while, but you would have to do this anyway if you were building this from scratch. Anytime you add a slot or a socket to a character, if you want them to wear something, you kind of got to put it where that thing goes or use it. And what I said earlier too is like the positions of his arms. If you really didn't like how his arms are so close, you can do one of two things. You can play around with the retargeting manager and try and bend his arms to a different spot before you retarget all the anims. Or you can go in here and you can highlight portions of his body and you can tilt those around however you see fit. And once you get him where you want to, you hit the key and apply key, and that'll put his arms there. Okay. Now the reason that's moving is because that's parented to the hand. Okay. So then, yeah, I could go back here to the weapon slot and I could drag that thing around, and just, again, by just kind of moving it back and forth, you'd probably want to pan yourself so that you can see him from the side like this, and you get access to all these different pieces. But you're just going to pull it up until it's close to his hands. Move it around a little bit like that, kind of get it close. And then you're going to want to pan back over to the other side of this. And you can see there it's not quite right. But you go back to the weapon slot, you just tweak it down. And big help here too is make sure you set the position of the grid snap value. You want to kind of bring this down. And same thing like your rotation angles and all that kind of stuff. You want to kind of make this a little bit more granular, just because you're really trying to get fine detail here. And once you get that kind of where you want it, weapon slot, and I can again kind of tilt this over some, maybe split the difference between these two, and then take my item and slide it over a little bit. And probably not going to be 100% perfect unless you spend a bunch of time in here tweaking this thing. But to the casual observer who's getting shot to death, they probably won't notice much that that maybe your hand's not perfectly inside of the trigger or something like that. Maybe a screenshot would jack you up a little bit, but and again, you can take these and just slightly tilt them down some. If you really want to get in there and play with this thing, you can. But once you get that where you want it, it should be pretty well good to go. And that's whatever this animation walk forward rifle iron sight. So might not be perfect, but it's pretty decent. And that's basically the gist of this whole thing. So I see we got a couple people in the chat there. I see Felix is back. I know Acid's probably still in there watching this thing. Have I answered your questions about setting this thing up, combining these two packages together, and getting it onto a Synty Polygon thing? I'll give you a second to get back to me on that, because I feel like that's kind of about all you can really do with this. Just giving everybody a second to catch up in the chat there. I don't know if anybody else is still watching or not. I'm assuming people are in here, unless you're just leaving me on in the background. All right, I don't know how long it takes to get that audio back out to you guys and get back. That's one of the challenges with live streaming, is I don't know what the total buffer is on that thing, how long it takes to hear back from you. But I kind of feel like, if you go through these animations in the Polygon or whatever it is you're using, whatever system, you're going to have to go through and just kind of tweak those things out. You might run into some issues here and there. I'm not sure. I didn't go through every possible scenario with this. I did enough to get it integrated and get the characters brought over and mapped. The one thing I will show you, actually, I should have done this earlier. I'm going to show you something with the Synty characters. And Felix, if you're still out there, this kind of applies to you because you've asked this question a couple times. And I think I finally figured out a little bit better way to do the animation from a Synty character onto the mannequin. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to end this portion of the video. I'm not going to start another stream. I'm just going to get out of this project. We'll save selected. Hopefully that answers everybody's questions about that MSGT thing. If you have questions about it, feel free to leave comments in the thing there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in here and start up a brand new. Let's start up a brand new project, and we're going to go in and get a third-person project by default from UE with just the mannequin in it. And then I'm going to put my Polygon Farm characters in there, and then I'm going to remap the. I'm going to remap the thing. What is going on here? New project category. What is happening to this? I haven't seen that before. I don't normally go into the editor that way, but I'm going to go in here. I'm going to pick a third-person character. And project settings. What's going on here? Choose whether to create blueprint or C++, maximum quality, ray tracing disabled. Alright, well, kind of normal. And I'll just call this third person demo and create a project there. I don't know if you guys are still out there or not. I haven't heard back from you in a little bit. Hopefully that helped you out, Acid, if you're still on there. If you're not, you're probably over working on your project right now. And also, I noticed in my settings, when I go back to watch the watch back on the live streams, I've noticed that my quality on here doesn't automatically go up to 1080, but I broadcast at 1080, so hopefully you know that you can go up there and click the little button at the top if yours isn't showing up in better definition, because some of these things are hard to read without that. But for those of you who are just joining in or at the back end of the stream, this is we've been working a lot on Synty animations, getting them mapped over to our mannequin. And one of the challenges that we typically have is that the shoulders get crushed and caved in on this animation. So Felix and I have talked about this a couple times, trying to solve this problem, and I think I may have come up with the actual solution to it, or at least something that gets it pretty close. So I've created a third-person example project. I'm going to go into the Epic editor or Epic launcher or whatever, and I'm going to go down to my library and look for some of my Synty packages that I have in here. Oh, wait a minute, it might be under Polygon. I think they're called Polygon. So I've got an adventure pack, city zombies, and battle royale. And actually, those are pretty big packages. I'll bring in the farm package that I was talking about earlier. So if I go out to my D drive, I have the Synty Polygon Farm pack. I'm going to go into the Unreal Engine version, Polygon Farm content, get my Polygon Farm, right click it and say copy. And I'm going to go into the hold on. I'm going to go in here to the content folder, right click and say show and explore. I just saw your comment there, Felix. Let me see. Oh, you found a solution to it also? I did not get your email. Let me go grab that. Or just tell me on here what your solution was. It might be the same thing. Is it mine is that when you go to the mannequin, when you go to the skeleton, you go to the skeleton tree, and under the options over here, you say show retargeting options, and you right click and you progressively or recursively set translation retargeting skeleton. And what that does is it forces the animations to go to the skeleton instead of the original animations, which may be distorted by the bones. I don't know if that's your same solution or not. If it is, that's great. Glad you found it. I did not read your email yet, though, but I will look at it here in about 2 seconds. But first, I'm going to go. I had pulled that. I want to say show folder or show and explorer. And I'm going to go to the content section. That's where everything's at. I'm going to right click and I'm going to paste my Polygon farm in there. Oh, it's the same solution. That's funny that we independently came up with that. I actually figured it out late last night, and I was going to get back on. I was working on that the live stream I did, and at the very end of that session, I was like, "Oh, I wonder if there's a better way to do this." And in my YouTube feed was the original documentation from Unreal Engine regarding that issue. I'll show you real quick what the video is in case you guys want to look this up, because they're actually very helpful. So if I go into the, where's my Where's my history? Let's see here. So in here, man, there's got a lot of history there. What's going on?
And they say, oh.
What the hell? Who's watching my YouTube? Probably my wife. Anyway, down here, skeleton assets, importing, sharing skeletons, A&M section 2 of this was a long time ago, and another one for A&M retargeting different skeletons. But both of these videos, I believe this one right here at 24
changes,
right in here is the one where it tells you exactly how that happens. So hopefully you see this once I get done scrolling through my videos on there. There is documentation in the Unreal Engine piece that tells you about how to retarget Mixamo characters, and I think that they mentioned something in there about retargeting, um, importing and sharing skeletons. But this is where I had originally seen this a long time ago, and I forgot all about it until I was going through the other day. I was like, oh, let me take a look at that again. And I watched this video last night, or maybe a day ago or so. You saw in my history there. I pulled it up. As soon as I hit that section, I went, wait a minute, that might be it. I went back into the MSGT thing I was working on, and sure enough, that straightened out a lot of it. So again, this is the video that kind of told me how to get that straightened out, but we're going to go and put it into practice real quick. And I'm going to go into the mannequin, my mannequin folder, the character mesh, and we've got our skeleton there. What we're going to do with him is under the retarget manager, we're going to go in and say select rig, and we're going to put him on a humanoid rig and save it. And then, as I mentioned earlier, what I like to do is I like to take his upper arm, I take it up about 50. I do that on both sides over here, upper arm. And we're just trying to get him into a T-pose that's going to match our Synty Polygon assets. Then what I do is I hold down the Alt key and my left mouse button. I go up and look at the top of his arms here. And I'm typically going to take these and rotate them back about 30. 30 might be a little too far back. Let's go back just 20. I'll take these back 20. And then if you look back from the front of this again, hold down the Alt key and the left mouse button and tilt him back down. You can see that they're still up a little high. So we take that lower arm and we just tilt it down 10 on each side. And then you can take his hand and bring his hand up like maybe 20. So these settings seem to work pretty decently. But now we have him in this more of a T pose. Yeah, there's actually some pretty good video out there for a lot of stuff, and you just have to figure out how it's changed from when they did the videos a long time ago to the current version, but usually it's pretty close. Now that we have him in our T pose, we just go up here and say modify pose, use current pose. If you guys watched any of my other videos, you've seen this probably 1,000 times. So now that we say modify and use current pose, we have that, and we just save it. Now we're going to go down to our Polygon Farm. We're going to go in there and look at our meshes and get our character. And again, we have the scarecrow for the skeleton, or skeleton for the scarecrow rather. Double click that. He already has a humanoid rig on here. But what I want you to look at real quick is double check and make sure everything's mapped correctly and go to the Show Advanced tab. And what you'll notice is that they didn't map some of the parts of the hand here. And the other thing is, you want to make sure that these lower arm twists, or anything that says twist in it, we don't have anything for doing anything with a twist. So we want to get rid of that. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to go middle. If you look at the Synty Polygon characters on their skeleton, they have an index finger. And let's go real quick. I'm going to pan around here so you can see this. They have an index finger that if I move it, it's just moving that first finger. I don't know if you can see that real well or not. It's kind of an awkward angle with that box popping up in front of everything. But that's the one pointer finger, okay? So you want the pointer finger is the index. This other thing called finger is all of those other fingers. That's like the whole kit and caboodle. Let me go over here and see if I can show that. Actually, on this one here, it's not. Look at that. Maybe I'm a liar. So does he have... Where's his other finger at? Now I'm pretty sure they all. Oh, that is right. Yeah, I'm still correct. The other part's his thumb. I'm just at a bad angle. I thought I was right. So finger, you want to make sure that you map these other things for your retarget manager. You want to go in here and make sure your index finger has the 1, 2, and 3 on it for the left, but then your middle, you want that to go to finger 1 left, finger 2 left, finger 3 left, and then on the pinky, same thing, finger 1 left, finger 2 left, so on and so forth. Now, if you guys are really, really super lazy or you don't feel like doing that, on my Google Drive, I do have the Synty Polygon mapping for this that has these in it, and you can just go in here and load. Yeah, there's a video I do where it show you how to do that. And when you get done doing this yourself the first time, you can save this file, export it out of your project, and hold on to it. And then later on, when you're doing another project, bring it back in and just load it, and it'll remap these for you. So um, hopefully I didn't insult anybody by suggesting you might be lazy. I'm the same way. So what I do is I try and do it one time, and then I try and use it over and over and over again. So I'm going to go into the middle finger here. Same thing. This is just going to go to finger, but this is on the right hand side. So finger 1 right, finger 2 right. Whoa, that's not it. Finger 2 right. I'm going to scroll down. Finger 2 right, finger 3 right. I keep grabbing the wrong thing here. And the pinky, same one. I did it again. It's been a long day. Pinky 2 goes to finger 2. And pinky 3 goes to finger 3 right. The thumb's already mapped correctly. We don't want any of this twist stuff in here. The ball's okay. Everything else should be fine. And what I was saying is once you get this mapped the way you want it to be, you just hit this save button. And then you can call this, like Synty, farmer or farm pack, bone mapping or whatever. And when you save that, it's going to end up in your character file. And you can take that and go out to your folder and grab it. And like I said, you can always add that in and drop it later. But we have our T-pose character in here. We've got all of his mapping on here now. And the only other thing that you want to do under this retarget manager is you want to go to the preview scene settings. And if you change this preview mesh to something closer to what you're using, like if we did that farm boy character again or whatever, or you could do the old male farmer. Once you get on there, whatever you want, just go over here and just say apply to asset and then save that. Okay. Now he's already in a T-pose, and our mannequin for the our skeleton for the mannequin is also already in our T-pose. We just put him in that, so you go back here and view pose. He's in his T-pose. Now what we can do with these is we can go to our mannequin animations and get this third person anim BP. We're going to right click this. We're going to say retarget anim blueprints, duplicate and retarget. We pick our scarecrow. You can see they're pretty straight. Prefix. I put Synty on these now. It helps me find them in the assignment in the game engine for when we're switching what character we're using. So with Synty underscore, we hit change. We go down to the Polygon Farm mesh characters. You right click and say new folder, animations, enter, hit OK. And now that I have that ready to go, I'm just going to go and say retarget, and it's going to drop them all in there. I hit save all, save selected, and every one of these animations now has that character in there. Now what's funny is, look at that. So when I mapped that this time, look at that, it did twist his hand up. Son of a... Well, it might straighten out though, because what we're going to do is what we just talked about a second ago before this video. You can see how his shoulders are kind of caved in, and his arms are a little crooked and all that stuff. Well, if you go to his skeleton, or even inside of these animations, if you go right in here to the skeleton side, I think in the animation you have to say options, show retargeting options, right click here and say recursively set translation retargeting the skeleton. And when you do that, it should straighten a lot of that stuff out. Now his hand's still a little jacked up, but his shoulders look mostly better. But maybe I would have been better off to leave those hands. I did find one time that leaving the hand unmapped actually worked out better. Let's go see if that's still the case. Let's force delete that. I might be lying to you on the hand setup. I knew that they didn't have it on there. Maybe they left it off for a reason. Maybe it was jacking them up too. So if we go back to our Polygon character skeleton here, and on that retargeting for the advanced side, we'll go ahead and clear these extra fingers off. Maybe don't even put them on there. There's your pinky and your ring. And we're just going to leave the thumb and the index. Index and thumb. And index and thumb on there. So we'll do the same thing. We'll take off the middle and the pinky. And it's funny because it only looks like it jacked up the left side on the other one. Or maybe, yeah, it was on the left side. But we'll get rid of them in here. Pinky, pinky, ring, ring, ring. And we'll leave our thumb alone. Alright, so that's all cleared out now. Everything else was the way it was by default. Save it. Mannequin animation blueprint. Retarget. Duplicate. Pick the skeleton. Prefix with Synty. Underscore. Change the directory. Polygon Farm meshes. Character animations. OK. Retarget. And then we get those in there. His hand's still a little squirrely to me. See that one finger? One finger's jacked up pretty good. And a lot of that, you can see how his wrist is kind of tilted down a little bit. And his arms are a little squirrely. But these are all proper, so I don't know. You'll have to play around with the different options on how that's targeted. But I think anyway, I think this looks better. You probably found the same thing that looks better than what it did, so it's still kind of a win. I still think the best way is what we were doing the other night, which is taking the skeleton out to the Mixamo engine and bringing in asset animations against that Mixamo skeleton. And then if you do that and you rebind everything to the switch everything to recursively down to the skeleton, I think that works the best. So now that we have that in there, we can go to our third person blueprint folder, down to blueprints, third person character, double click it, go to the mesh and the viewport, and we're going to go over here and pick one of our characters. We'll do male old and get his Synty third person AnimBP as his animation class, compile and save that. And now we have our Synty character out here, and we can hit play. And he still looks a little weird to me. I think our other character looked better, but he's also a little above ground. That's because it was when we retargeted the animation and forced it to the skeleton, it stretched this guy or picked him up off the ground a little bit. So may have to fix that. You're probably going to have to go into the third person character mesh under the viewport. And before you play with this, make sure you retain the settings for this capsule. Click on the capsule component rather, and the viewport. And then the height of this capsule is what's causing him to be up off the ground. So just remember that the half height is 46 or 96 and 42. Sounds like a song, 96 and 42. Isn't that a Tool song or something? 96 and 42. We're going to go and you can change this capsule half height to like 90. And that might be enough to let him drop down. And you'll have to experiment with these settings. And unfortunately, not all of them are the exact same. But you can see that brought his feet down and got him on the ground. It might be a little down further than what I want to. But the other thing that capsule half height thing is good for is if you're having trouble getting your character through a doorway because of a mesh collision. You can see that the original capsule on these things is pretty tall in comparison to your character. So if you think your character's head should fit through a doorway and it's not, it's because this capsule's too tall. So you can fix that by changing the half height. And then once you change the half height, if you change it too far, you're going to have to take your character and go in here and pick your tool to move that character. And you're going to have to move him either up or down in relationship to that capsule to make everything work out. So that's how that's going to end up going. So I'm going to hit Control Z to put him back where he was. And you can see here he's at negative 97. So if I move the half height of the capsule down a little bit further, I might have to move him up some. So his Z might go up to like, so I'm snapped at 87, 97, 87. I'd probably change my grid snapping down to like 1 and bump him to like 95-ish, 96, and get this capsule down a little bit tighter around his head. But those are all things you can play with, and that's where to find them and fix them and everything. So hopefully everybody that had a chance to tune in or watches this down the road finds some value in some of this stuff. Again, the primary thrust of this particular live stream was to integrate the multiplayer survival game template with the farm pack, and then to bring in a Synty character. So that's what we had worked on earlier. And hopefully we answered all the questions about that the best that we could. So with that being said, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up, make it a little bit more concise tonight. Felix, if you had any questions about anything, this is your big chance. I don't know if I can help you out with anything, but I can start up another stream if it's something different than what we're already talking about here. But my next project here, I wonder what I'm going to work on next. Probably more things with that multiplayer survival game template. But I'm going to clean this up a little bit and get rid of that. Oh, no problem, man. I appreciate somebody watching it, and hopefully it helps to have somebody else to bounce some ideas off of. Real quick, before you get off here, or before I get off here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my phone and check my email. Hold on. Let's see here. I go to my email. All right, so I did not get an email from you. Let me check. I wonder if you're going into like my junk folder or trash folder or something. You shouldn't be, but let's see. I'm gonna type my email address on here so that you can see exactly what it is. Because this is the second time I think you've sent me something and I haven't seen it. So I'm typing it in for you right now. So there's my email address. And do you use Discord at all, Felix? Yeah, I don't see anything from you. Maybe they're blocking all your email because they don't want to let them come across the border or something. I don't know. Yeah, tc_mabe at yahoo.com. I don't see anything in my junk or my trash folder. Well, let me give you my Discord name, and maybe we can connect on Discord, because there's a lot of times that I may not actually live stream something, but if you still want to rap about game stuff or whatever, it might be easier offline, so I don't have to do a video, you know. Nah, but let me get you on Discord real quick, and if you have a couple minutes, we'll connect on there, and we'll try and sort that out. Um, so my Discord name is, I think I can just type it back in here. So I just, I can't believe I just did what I did. Let's see, my Discord name is this. All right, let's see if that comes out there. Yeah, I'll do the same thing. I'm actually, well, it's gonna be tough because if I end the live stream, then I can't see you on here. So you, when you get on there, connect to me. Let me see, friend request pending. Okay, I am gonna jump off the live stream, and I'll connect with you on Discord real quick, and we'll figure it out with the email thing. Okay. Everybody else have a great night. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions or you want me to cover anything in a future tutorial, feel free to drop me a message. And again, stay safe. Hopefully you guys are doing well out there. And again, if you want anything else, let me know. Be more than happy to try and help out if I can. TC Mabe, TC Gaming. Have a great night.